Hello, everybody. I'm Zach Weber, co-founder and head of operations here at Big Red Jelly. I'm joined by Mallory, and she is our brand director here, and she is going to be answering some questions about what it means to be a brand director, what is branding, and some other fun questions about branding in today's modern world. Okay, so Mal, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story here at Big Red Jelly, at the agency, since you've joined the team, your process of interviewing, and now as brand director, how have things changed since then?
Yeah, so when I first interviewed for Big Red Jelly, I didn't really have that much experience in the agency life. I was just in school and beginning to get into marketing. And the interview process was quite intense from someone who just worked in retail and also the food industry as a server. So I went through, I think, a couple rounds of interviews, and I was really impressed from the beginning at the team culture. And I think that's something that's continued throughout my journey here is the culture. It just keeps building and building. And I think every company goes through its lulls, but it's been amazing since the beginning. And yeah, it's been great.
That's a fantastic answer. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your favorite parts of working here at Big Red Jelly, some of the challenges associated with being a brand director, and some of the day-to-day activities you do?
Yeah, so I'll start with day-to-day because that's what I do every day. I come in and the first thing I do is check on my people and my team. I open up, our internal tools to make sure that projects are going smoothly, nobody's too overworked, and I'm kind of just making sure that everything's running properly. And then from there, I dive into personal projects and all of that great stuff. And throughout the day, we have lots of team meetings, client meetings, lots of meetings. And I think that's probably like the biggest change from being, strategist to director is really interacting with teams and collaborating. One of the main challenges that I've faced being a director and kind of taking on that role is really navigating different people on my team. They all respond differently to critique and advice, and so really understanding how to communicate clearly to each individual has been kind of challenging.
Can you help us understand a little bit more about that transition coming into a creative space, and what does it mean to be a creative, especially as a young person in the creative space?
Yeah, I've always been a creative individual. Ever since I was little, you could catch me drawing, singing, dancing, all of that great stuff. And I did do competitive dance, which is a different outlet of creativity for me growing up. And so I think that the more I dabbled into marketing and kind of learned the different outlets within marketing, it's a very large, broad term. You could be in the ad space, you could be a designer, you could be SEO, all the different things. And so I really gravitated towards that graphic design aspect and really creating something from scratch that not only I felt good about, but also that others could feel good about. So I think it started within projects within school. I was just doing, the jobs that I had because I needed to pay for school. Job juice is not my passion, but it was a great start. And it also taught me a lot of, I think, soft skills. So it was great in that aspect, but then I found my creative outlet through graphic design and led me here.
That's awesome. And so with graphic design kind of being the gateway to the creative space for you, graphic design and branding, at least here at Big Red Jelly, we consider those to be two very different things. Can you kind of elaborate what is the difference between graphic design and branding, and why do we put so much emphasis on branding?
Yeah, for sure. Branding, in my perspective, is more so the entirety of your identity as a company, as a person. Graphic design is just kind of plug and chug. Someone tells you to make something, you execute that well. It can be very detailed or simple. Graphic design is also very subjective, it can be really anything. But with branding, there's just so many, essential layers for a successful company to have within branding. Your identity consists of who you are, what do you sound like, what are those visuals, and I think that it all goes in hand, I guess.
Mallory, what advice would you have for creatives who are just getting started and trying to kind of make their own pathway in the creative space? What are some hurdles or tips and tricks that you have for those people?
Yeah, something that I really underestimated was personal responsibility and just self-discipline. I think that when you go into the agency space, you kind of just expect everyone to tell you what to do. But I honestly think it's quite the opposite. You're put in a position where you're supposed to be self-efficient and also figure out problems on your own. You have Google it. And so you don't need to, be asking your mentors every day small questions that you could find on the internet. And so I think if I could go back in time, I would really make myself, more efficient, self-disciplined, meaning I stay on task and I don't spend too much time on a project. I found myself just deep in work for hours and hours, and then next thing you know, I didn't work on another project and I'm late. And so just kind of that self-discipline and self-efficiency.
That's great. Can you also, a term we hear a lot, especially for beginners in the creative space, is imposter syndrome. Can you speak to that, your experience with imposter syndrome, advice for people who might be dealing with feelings of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think everyone goes through it. If you haven't, you will. If you say you hadn't, you're lying. I feel like everyone always feels like they may not live up to the expectations others have for them. I definitely have found myself, being on the younger end of our company specifically. That's been a little bit challenging, looking at others around me, asking me for advice when I don't feel adequate to give it. But at the end of the day, I've read a couple books like The Making of a Manager and just a couple other self-help books that made me realize just because I'm 3 or 4 years younger than everyone else doesn't mean that I don't have, wisdom or advice or tips and tricks that could help them progress in their professional development. So.
How do you go about helping the other team members here who need your criticism, need your support? Do you have some tools or tactics that you use when collaborating with team members?
Like I mentioned earlier, it really is dependent on each individual. It took a lot of it listening. And I think one of my strengths is I'm very observant. And so I'm very observant of my whole team. I know when they're having a bad day or when they look overwhelmed or stressed. And so I feel as though that's helped me kind of understand when, okay, it's my turn to step in. They're not going to come to me and say, hey, I'm drowning. And so it's my turn to be like, hey, how are you feeling? What is your workload? Oh, you're overwhelmed? Okay, here are your outlets, here are your tools. And that's something that I'm still learning is there are different so-called levers that you can pull in order to alleviate pressure or stress.
Oh, that's great. Very high IQ. Mallory has very high IQ. That's where I struggle. I am an emotional wasteland. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, you sir, in the shirt.
So I heard you guys just got back from Circles Conference, a creative branding conference in Texas. What are some of the things you learned there, each of you? You can go into that. And question number 6 here, how do you and your team at Big Red Jelly keep up with all these trends and constant changes in the creative space? So what did you learn at this conference? And how do you fight that battle of keeping up with these creative trends that come and go, it feels like, all the time?
Staying up to date, especially in the digital marketing sphere, is a constant challenge and a battle because we're in a world where specifically our products and services have to develop and evolve very rapidly. So you see trends in graphic design that sometimes only last a couple of months, couple of weeks even. And so staying on top of that and seeing what's coming, but not only just following trends or being up to date, but I think our team does a really good job of predicting trends or even setting some local trends with our clients as well. So seeing what's going to be successful, seeing what's going to help our clients perform better with their brands and their websites, and then executing on those visions there. Now, how we do that, we have dedicated time and kind of goals and learning points, and we call them rocks every quarter. Basically, time and resources dedicated specifically to going to these conferences, going and listening to speakers or bringing in guest speakers, bringing in partners who maybe have more expertise in different areas of digital marketing, so that we can collaborate and learn from them and see what they're seeing in their respective kind of areas of expertise for trends in digital marketing.
The biggest takeaway I took from Circles and attending that conference was it's really about the basics. I think that it's really overlooked, and we look at these other agencies who are working with these huge clients, Amazon, Groupon, all these really large names that are known nationally. And I think it's easy to, again, feel that imposter syndrome where you're like, whoa, how could I ever amount to something like that? And You look at their framework, what they're doing day to day, and it really is just the basics. They're doing, number one, what they love and they're passionate about it. And then number two, it's just doing the simple stuff. They're, I guess, learning how to communicate clearly to their clients, but in their specific industry. And again, I think it just reverts back to those basics. And if you just excel at those, then nothing really stops you.
It's great.
Coming back to branding, what do you think most clients and creatives get wrong about branding, if anything? In your experience working with our clients, Mallory, when they come to us, what tends to be some of the more common issues that you're seeing business owners are having when it comes to their brand? Do they have misconceptions? Are there always these things that they're missing? What have you seen in working with your clients?
The first common thing I see is they're not really willing to invest. They often come to us with, the desire to really have a fleshed out brand, and they think that's just a logo, which is a really big misconception. It's not just your logo or visual identity. It's also who you are. What are your core values? How are people going to come on your website and see that you're an actual person? You're not just there to take their money or just, become this big ruler over everyone. And so I think that's something they just aren't really willing to invest because they're like, why would I pay this amount of money for you to write words for me? And it's like, well, because your audience needs to know that.
What I see most clients are missing when they're asking for a brand is the understanding of what a brand is. And so kind of bouncing off what Mallory was saying, they think a brand is the logo or the alternate version of the logo or the typography or the iconography, where it's not any of that. Those are just visual representations of your brand. Even your mission statement or your vision statement, those are just verbal representations of your brand. Your brand really is what your target audience or what your customers and clients perceive you to be, right? And so if your clients and your customers have a different perception of you than you do, then you have a brand issue. And we see that a lot. And we're seeing that more and more now because brands are becoming synonymous with logos and graphic design where, okay, sweet, you have a visual representation, but it represents really nothing. And so you have to base all of your brand assets and all the visual representations of your brand on what people actually understand you to be. There's a kind of a cognitive dissonance between business owners and some of their clients. And if you get that wrong, it can prove to be fatal for some brands out there.
The second thing that I feel like a lot of our clients kind of get wrong from the beginning is we're not here to create your mission, your vision, who you are. We're here to take what you have, what is the idea, and refine it into a brand that works for your audience, that works online. And I think that a lot of people come to us and they're like, I don't know, what do you think my vision should be? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not in the concrete industry. I don't know how you do your process. I don't know why you started. I'm not passionate about this at all. And so for someone to come to me and expect results in the way where I'm going to kind of create your beliefs, it just doesn't really work like that. And so if you ever go to an agency, just come prepared to say why you're doing what you're doing.
For all the young up-and-coming creatives out there in school, in graphic design, maybe they're a copywriter, maybe they're a web designer, and they are thinking about getting into the agency life, what tips would you give them? What advice would you give?
For all the creatives making their entrance into the creative space or the agency space, some tips or advice that I have for those people would be, one, learn to accept criticism. I know it's very difficult, especially as a creative. You have to put some of your heart and soul into your work. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat. And so when you do, and then that work gets criticized, it's very easy to accept that or to receive that criticism as kind of personal criticism, as I'm not good or I have bad skills, where no, it's just what I produced wasn't on the mark. You're going to get criticism, so be ready to accept that. And then two is time management. Agency life is very hectic and it can be overwhelming if you don't know how to manage your time. And I'm not just talking about working on project or client projects. I'm talking about time dedicated for you to do your own kind of learning and growing, or time dedicated for you to do your own professional development as well. If you don't have that time blocked off, it's going to seem unreasonably chaotic. And so you have to have good time management skills.
Just to add to that, I think that agency life is a grind. And that is a common phrase I hear throughout anyone in the agency space. You are here, day in, day out grinding and just working your butt off. But with that being said, I think that there's a lot of room for people to grow in finding tools that make your life easier. And that's something that I also wish I would have done is I see all these tools, I get the ads for things that make, AI or things, project management, internal stuff. And so I think, if anything, encourage your team members to be on the lookout for those tools to make your life easier. If you have a calendar management system that can just do everything for you, purchase it. It's worth the extra $20 a month. And also don't be afraid to ask, your superior, your boss for tools that'll help you be more efficient and also allow you to spend more time on things you like the passion projects and also professional development. So just making that easier.
Mallory, this has been great. Last question for you. What do you see the brand industry or kind of the brand space and the creative space? What are you excited for when it comes to branding? And what's your vision for the brand team at Big Red Jelly?
I'm biased because I'm brand director, but I really do think that there's a lot of great goals that we can hit in the next year alone. And so just for us being able to come so far in this last year with various roadblocks internally, I think that next year I'm mostly excited to see our team take in a little more specialization personally. I think each of us has their own little secret sauce, their own little tips and tricks, and things that they're genuinely just really good at. And so for us to be able to capitalize on that and build each individual to be just a total superstar, and then from there work as a team to collaborate internally to create a beautiful process and project that not only we can be proud of, but also our clients. I think that'd be awesome.
That's great. Do I wrap up and say, well,
And thank you.
join us next week? Mallory, this has been fantastic. And then they got like a stack of papers.
Did I say like too much?